County and Sioux Falls Board of Adjustments. I will begin with a few introductory comments. As a courtesy to everyone here tonight, please make sure that all cell phones are turned off. The two boards work together as a joint zoning board of adjustments to consider variance applications and administrative appeals within the rural area surrounding the city. The area is displayed on the screen. Actions taken by the Board of Adjustments require 2/3 majority vote for approval, and all actions are considered as final. First on the agenda is public input. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? At this time, the Board of Adjustment will consider the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are perceived to be non-controversial and meet all of the criteria requirements for approval of a variance. The consent agenda will be acted on in one motion with no public hearing on the items, unless a member of the public, the commission, or staff requests the item to be removed from the consent agenda for discussion. The minutes from the July 23rd, 2018 meeting are also included in the consent agenda. Does any planning commission member wish to have an item removed for discussion? So I will read the items on the consent agenda. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the July 23rd, 2018 meeting. Item number 2 is the variance 1903 to reduce the minimum lot size from 1 acre to 0.36 acres and reduce the minimum rear setback from 30 feet to 15 feet on the property legally described as Tracts 1 and 2, MCWC Edition, Southeast Quarter, Section 18, Township 102, North, Range 48 West. The petitioner is Scott Booth. He's Executive Director for Minnehaha County Water Corp. Owners is still the same. The location is 47898 259th Street. Okay, those are the only two items on the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve item 1 and 2.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion made to approve item number 1 and item number 2 on the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries.
He said.
Motion to approve consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We had approval in a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Passes on consent.
We will move on to the regular agenda, and we'll follow the normal hearing procedure by requesting the planning staff to present a report on each item, and then request the petitioner to come forward and make a statement or answer any questions. Anyone from the audience wishing to address the items shall be recognized and move to the podium and state their name and address for the record. We will then discuss the matter and take appropriate action. Kevin?
Good evening, Kevin Hookman, County Planning Department. This variance is requested to reduce the front yard setback of the lot and the front yard from 30 feet to 15 feet for the purpose of a single-family dwelling on the property. The property is located just north of Sioux Falls in a rural residential area. The property was 2 tracts that had been combined together so that the petitioner may request to build 1 single-family dwelling where 2 family dwellings would otherwise be permitted. Tract 3, which maybe I'll highlight here, on this side, which would be the east side, does have a steep slope, and you'll see some pictures of that. And then Tract 4 on this side, or to the west, can't get the mouse back, is a little bit more flat. The house is plan to straddle between the 2 lots. The Board of Adjustment should be aware that a single-family dwelling can likely be placed to meet the setbacks on the west portion of the lot. As noted, it's a little flatter, where the land is not so steep. And as part of this variance application, the Board of Adjustments shall follow the regulations of the ordinance based on findings which are in evidence of the project. evidence number A, that the particular physical surroundings, shape, or topographical conditions of the specific property involved would result in a particular hardship upon which the owner or distinguished from mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were to be carried out. The petitioner says that the lot is not buildable without a variance because it's too east, and staff does recognize that the east lot is steep. However, staff does believe that there is buildable space in the west lot and part of the west side where the ground is more gradually steep. Item B, the conditions upon which the application for a variance is based would not be applicable generally to other property within the same zoning classification or other property substantially similar in use. This is a steep slope. The adjacent property to the east, right here, is also a steep slope. So by granting this a variance, it could be in the future that this property on the east would grant a variance as well. In addition, there are several properties to the east along Western Avenue that are currently steep sloped as well. I'll show the topography map that shows that they're similarly sloped, and yet they have single-family dwellings that are meeting the setbacks. Letter C, the granting of the variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other property and improvements in the area which the property is located. In this respect, the proposed setback would not be detrimental to the public welfare, and it won't necessarily hurt the neighboring properties for the rest of the residential traffic, or residential development, excuse me. Number D, the proposed variance will not unreasonably impair an adequate supply of light, air adjacent property, increase the congestion on public streets, or increase the danger of fire, endanger public safety, or diminish or impair public values in any area, property values. Again, in this case, the variance would not likely impair any of those items. Letter E, that because the circumstances, conditions that there is no possibility that the property can be developed in strict conformity with the provisions of the zoning regulations, and that authorization of the variance is therefore necessary to enable the reasonable use of the property. It is likely that construction could be done on the slope with some increased cost to the property owner. But staff does find that there may be alternative locations on the property, such as the west side, where a dwelling could be placed. Letter F, that the variance, if authorized, will represent a minimum variance that will afford reasonable relief and will represent at least modification desirable of the zoning regulations. The petitioner has noted that he has made several adjustments in his own plans to bring the building as far back as he can. But again, staff feels that there's alternative locations yet. Staff finds that the property can still be developed with a single-family dwelling by other means, and therefore does not meet the provisions of the ordinance. So staff recommends denial of the variance. And I'll go through some photos. So there's the site plan of the house, and you'll see those dashed lines are the front yard setback, and it's going to be reduced by half to 15 feet from 30 feet. There's a photo. You can maybe barely see it right in the middle of the photo. There's a pin, like a stake in the ground, where the house would be located, the corner off the property line. And this is looking up a little bit further up the hill, more onto the lot, the tract 4, the west side of the lot, where it's a little flatter. A little bit more of a overall view of that area from the flat end to the slope. There's the end of the road where it turns down to the south. And then there's the steep sloped area of the tract 3. So here's a couple of the dwellings that are located on a steep slope towards Western Avenue. And that's what I have. Is there any questions?
Like none for now. Thanks, Kevin. Is the petitioner here? Would one of you then come forward and state your name and address, please?
Jerry Myatt, 3305 Old Yankton Road, Sioux Falls. Mr. Stevens on vacation, so he's not here, so we're the builder, so we're here representing. We've been out there several times trying to figure it out with him. His intentions weren't to actually join the two tracks. He did it just for this. Actually would like to just make track 4 smaller and still separate it, but to try to get this to work, we did move it into track 4 a little bit to try to achieve this, but the fact is the slope is so severe, there's a good 12, 14 foot of fall, and you worry about a house sliding down the hill. That's our concern. The other concern is, from the property line to the edge of Flicker Drive, if you can see, there's probably 28 feet from the property line to the edge of Flicker Drive on track 3 or the edge of the house. If you look at the adjacent house, which is not really showing the outline of the house, there's only 19 feet from their property line to the edge of Flicker Road. So we don't really see an issue with distance from the road the further we move the house over. He's already got like a 125-foot driveway we have to build. So the further we try to even push the house to the west, the driveway just gets huge, long. It's kind of a big expense, and so that's kind of why we're here.
Okay, is there any questions for this representative, for the petitioner?
Madam Chair,
Sure.
so
yeah.
is there a chance that there would be 2 houses built on these 2 lots?
There could be. I mean, they're not, obviously, him joining the tracks, no, that's impossible. But, if he wanted to rezone this and the zoning committee were to approve, if he were to turn this 1 point whatever acre into maybe a 3/4 acre now, because he's only slid into that other tract about, I would say, 40 feet, and it's 240 feet wide. The further he does go west too on this property, not only does it make the driveway super long, and it wasn't his intention of even doing what he did now, but he also gets up into the view of the interstate and all that, so his whole intention was to keep it here. Even if he could get 20 feet setback and not 15 or some relief would help our whole situation.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here else in the audience that wishes to speak of this item? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Don Newhoffen, 6209 North Purple Martin Avenue. I live right beside that tract, and I personally would move it further west. Driveway lengths aren't that big a deal, but it is a steep grade to try to build a house on. But the further west he goes, the better the ground is. 3 and 4 in that tract are worthless because they go totally downhill. But I had no idea until tonight what was actually going on. So I'm not for the 15-foot thing, so thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, please Come forward, you have to state your name and address, please.
I'm Will Riesling. I'm also a neighbor in that neighborhood. Also supervisor for our township. And I didn't know how this was gonna lay out either. And that for now, 2 years ago, we had all of our signage updated to the current standards of the US government. And we got arrow panels, I don't know if you saw in that picture, and those can't be moved. And so they're put there where they're supposed to be, but as far as the driveway, you're coming up north on Purple Martin and then intersecting with Flicker. So where's the driveway gonna be?
We'll have him come back up after
Okay, that's what
the
I
question you
just
might
wanted-
have.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Will you please come back up and maybe answer his question about the driveway?
Different guy.
My name's Craig Winia. I reside in Rock Rapids, Iowa, and I'm a project manager for Jaren Homes. So the driveway currently, if you come up Purple Martin where it intersects with West Flicker Drive, the driveway, as you can tell, the property line of this tract 4 does jog back to the south before it diagonals off to the west there, to the west property line. And then, so the driveway would actually turn off of Purple Flicker and curve to the west. Oh, yeah, towards the northwest, and then would come straight into the garage spaces also. Does that answer your question there? And then also, with shifting the house further up into tract 4, we run into a complication with flatter ground. The homeowner designed the house to be a walkout basement with a core floor underneath his garage. So we do need some of that grade change that's on that ground in order to accommodate the garage space under the garage. And as soon as we start shifting further up the hill, we're gonna end up doing more dirt work and land mining to change that hill and that grade. Not saying that from West Flicker, if you measure the setback from West Flicker to the property line, I think JJ mentioned on that, it's 28 feet. And then from Purple Martin to the property line, it actually only measures 19 feet on the setbacks. So in relevation to this, if we did a 15-foot setback, we'd still be further off of West Flicker than the other houses are off of Purple Martin.
Thank you. Kevin, could you come back up? Whatever they were saying, is it any different than what you have here, or?
So I think what they're talking about, let's see if I can get my mouse. As you can see that this road kind of hugs the south end of the right-of-way. So the house is going to be set back quite a ways from the road, but it doesn't necessarily, it's just because the road is not centered into the right-of-way part. It could be problematic in the future, say when this area gets annexed by the city of Sioux Falls and Sioux Falls does road improvements, where that road will then be aligned in the center of the road, that would no longer be the case. It would be farther from the road. So.
Okay.
I think, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that clarifies it a lot better. Okay. Any other questions for Kevin? Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I'm going to close the floor then. Commissioners? Jeff?
Well, I guess I wish that the applicant was here, because it's not quite clear to me, that we need to accommodate his dream house on this lot, which I'm certain, the quality of building on this lot was taken into account when it was sold. You know, it's not, and it's not an easy lot to build on. I'd ask the city folks, have any of you guys been out there at all?
I know the area a little bit. It is a challenge to build, I think. But this again is a board of adjustment rather than just a commission, a planning commission. And so the adjustments in the board of adjustment have to meet a higher standard based upon site-induced hardships. And as an architect, I know there's a lot of things you can do with building, but fighting the site is not one that's usually wise. And so this seems like it's trying to stick a building on here that may not be well suited for its site. And so that's really not what the Board of Adjustment is about, is trying to make anything happen. It's trying to allow variances that are site-induced, and this one does not appear to be site-induced in my opinion.
Thank you. Any other comments, commissioners?
You guys kind of, you know, I just interject here a little bit. There's always that, I'm a contractor, obviously, and to kind of piggyback on what Sean said, you know, there's always that conflict between the architect and the builder from time to time. However, in this particular case, I do agree that maybe the building isn't correct for the site, unfortunately, and maybe a different design, a different location on the site would be more appropriate, but I just can't see making a variance or a board of adjustment to allow that 15-foot reduction, so.
Is that a motion?
Okay, so I'll make the motion to deny.
Okay, motion's made and seconded to deny the variance. 1902, all those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes on the county side.
City side?
Move to deny this item. Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Move on to old business. There is none. There is no new business. Need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Adjourn. Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.